All right, we're here in the shop. I've got my toolbox here because I want to tell you about the best hand tools I have ever used and why I have this old toolbox with a bunch of old tools. Before I get into the story behind the tools, I'm going to start with this old bottle opener that I found here in my garage when I bought this place. Alright, now on to the first tools that I bought. Our story begins with this screwdriver and this crescent wrench. When I was in high school, I went to a yard sale, and for $7 I bought this screwdriver, this crescent wrench, and a roll of drill bits where about half the bits were missing, but I didn't really care. Little did I know, this would become my favorite tool of all time. I've used this thing for screwing things, for scraping things, for prying things. I've even used it as a grounding rod. Wrapped a wire around it, stuck it in the ground for other purposes. I've used the handle to whack things, kind of like a makeshift hammer. I know that I'm not really supposed to do any of that with this sort of thing, but this thing is bulletproof. This is my favorite tool of all time. This crescent wrench was, for a long time, one of my very primary tools because back in high school, I didn't have many tools, but I had a truck that broke down all the time, so I had to fix it a lot. This is a Blue Point 10-inch crescent wrench. On the other side, it says Snap-on Tools Corporation, Kenosha, Wisconsin. So these two tools started it all. I loved this screwdriver so much that I kept my eye out for other screwdrivers with this handle design because it was so dirty and so worn that I couldn't tell what brand of screwdriver this was. I knew what brand of crescent wrench this was, obviously, but I couldn't tell what brand this was. Fast forward a few years, I came across these two screwdrivers at a pawn shop. I got them for less than $1 for the pair, and the same thing. They were very dirty and very worn, and so I wasn't sure what brand it was, but I was still in search of these. One day I decided to kind of clean these up, and I found they said made in USA, and they had a logo on them that says Plomb, or Plum, I don't really know how to pronounce it, Plomb. And I realized that each one of these had that logo on it too. It said made in USA, and had that Plum logo. So I started searching for Plum tools because these are the best screwdrivers I've ever used. So I figured if these are great screwdrivers, they probably have great tools otherwise. And here I am today. This is my collection of Plum tools, which I absolutely love. There is something about these wrenches and these screwdrivers and these sockets that just, I don't know. They feel great. They're super simple. They're not flashy like you see a lot of tools today. They're not, super chrome polished or anything. And I don't know. There's something about them and the history of them. I've picked these up at so many stores across the Pacific Northwest, just wherever I can find them, pawn shops, thrift shops, yard sales. My goal is to have an entire set. I'm talking an entire set of sockets for the 1/2-inch drive and the 3/8-inch drive. An entire set of wrenches in all the different styles. I have quite a few screwdrivers. So I showed you these 3 flathead screwdrivers earlier. I also came across this Phillips one somewhat recently. Unfortunately, the tip is a bit messed up on it, but it still does work for some stuff. Now, a lot of these tools say Plum. However, I do have some Proto Tools. Like this one here. See if you can see that. It says Proto. Now, some of you might be familiar with the Proto company. A little bit of a history on these. Plum started in 1907 as blacksmith stuff. It was a small blacksmith in Los Angeles. And then in about the 1920s, they started making wrenches and screwdrivers and automotive tools. In the 40s, in 47 or 48, somewhere right in there, there was a trademark issue where there was a Plum tool company, Plumb, and they were suing Plum Tool Company over the name. They decided that they were going to rebrand to Proto, and that's why I have a couple wrenches that actually say both Proto and Plum on the same tool. And from what I understand, they made an agreement with the Plum Tool Company that they could keep that Plum tool name for 2 years. So they put both on there and then rebranded the rest from then on as Proto. Also, I have 2 of these wrenches and they have a really cool copper finish on them. So these are my Plum Sockets, with some of them being Proto, but my goal is to replace all the Proto ones with Plum. And it's the same with these swivel sockets, which I think are really cool. Save a little bit of space instead of having to have a swivel joint and a socket. Also, both of these ratchets here are Proto, but I hope to replace them with Plum one day. But these are still great ratchets. And these are early Proto that I have mixed in here. So they would have been very late 40s, like 49, or early 50s. A unique one that I found was this. It doesn't actually say Plum or Proto on it, but I looked up the model number on there, and it is a Proto number 4 Phillips with a 3/8 inch drive. All of these are Plum wrenches, and these are some of the smaller ones I have. Some of them are very unique, stuff that isn't as common today with the double open-ended wrenches and the double box end wrenches. These are really handy, especially this one here, 9/16 on one end and 1/2 inch on the other end. That's perfect for most classic American cars. I actually used to carry one in my old truck when I was in high school with not Plum, but had the 9/16 and the 1/2 inch because that was a lot of the bolts that were on that truck. Also, something to note is the combination wrench with the open end and the box end with the same size. That was invented by Plum, or they started it anyway, and other tool companies started to follow suit. These are some of the larger Plum wrenches that I own, and I believe this one is the oldest one that I own. I think this is from the 30s, whereas the rest of these are from the 40s. This one says WF. That stands for War Finish, I believe, which means it's World War II era. And this is my Plum Breaker Bar. It has a little bit of a bend in it, but it still works well. These are for adjusting really large nuts. I mean, really, really big nuts. These are Proto, all 3 of these. This is the biggest wrench I own, 1.5 inches. And then I actually own 2 1 1/8", but these are both Protos. I hope to eventually find Plum ones this big, but I have a feeling that's going to be difficult. And then this is a Proto Breaker Bar T-handle with a 1-inch socket deal. Whatever this part's called. These are some other Proto tools that I own, but they're all redundant with the Plum tools that I own, so I don't keep them in the toolbox and I don't really use them that often. But I'm hoping to set these aside and maybe make a collection of Proto tools as well. but my primary focus is Plum. Some other old interesting tools that I own is this old school bottle opener. Now, I don't know that this is that old. It might be 70s or 80s. I really don't know. But that's the one I keep here in the shop for when I need to open a cold one. And this here is a blue point wrench. But what's interesting is this end here was added by somebody. This is not original. It was welded on there. By the look at the head of this, I would say this is a pretty old wrench, 20s or 30s, and that would have been before they were doing the combination like this, I think. But this is the same brand that that Crescent Wrench was, and I believe Blue Point ended up either getting bought out or turned into Snap-on. This wrench, you can't hardly see it. Oh, it goes this way. But that says forward on it. It has an open end here and a closed end there. I'm assuming it is some sort of old tire iron or wrench that came with an old Ford car. I don't know what Ford car it would have come with. If you know where this came from, actually, put it down in the comments. I would love to know any sort of history on this, because I don't know any history on this. But this was given to me by a buddy. I do own full metric and standard sets. Also, there is a wrench missing here, but that's because it's in a vehicle I'm working on right now. I also have 1/2 inch, 3/8 inch ratchets. Oh, and 1/4 inch ratchet. And I have sockets for both metric and standard. I also have specialty bits, Allen wrenches, Torx bits. I've got reverse Torx bits and all sorts of stuff. I've got all sorts of extensions and pliers, and I have a lot of tools, but these tools do not bring me the joy that these tools do. And it's hard to describe the feeling, but there's something about working on cool old vehicles with cool old tools. It's just the history of everything. I mean, honestly, working on new stuff with cool old tools is really cool too. Now, one more thing with this toolbox here. This is made by Walton Products Incorporated, the grip lock tackle and toolboxes. This, I don't really have much information on this either, but when I got this, it was full of tackle. So it was set up as a tackle box, but I've repurposed it as a toolbox. And I really like its design, because if you see here, there's a couple slots here, and then there's a couple hooks here that are hooked to the handle. So when you close this, you lift the handle up, it actually locks the toolbox so it won't come open on you. It also has these latches as well, and it has this lock, but I unfortunately don't have the key for that. But this toolbox I thought fit the tools, and so that's why I put the tools in here, and I really like carrying this thing around. Now, if you've stuck around this far, thank you. I know this whole video I've just rambled about some old tools that most people probably think are junk, but I absolutely love these tools. These are the best tools I've ever used, and I don't think it's because they are necessarily better quality than the newer tools I own. I just really enjoy using them because of the history. Also, I mean, they are well built. They do work well. But I think there's something interesting about the history. Anyway, thanks for watching, and yeah, do the subscribe thing and stuff that all the cool kids say. Oh, also, one last thing. Down in the description, I put a link to a Discord server that I built for everybody to join, and you can share your projects, talk about cool old stuff, or ask questions about working on things and refurbishing things. I'd love to see you there.